Okay. All right. So we are recorded now. So hello, everyone. Thanks for joining this session and welcome to the second day of our Quantum Games Hackathon. We'll start with a talk given by Klem Jankiewicz. So Klem is also one of the mentors. She has already joined the Discord. And she will tell us about designing user interfaces for quantum games. So the title is Design 101. And if Clem, if you are ready, the Zoom is yours and we can start. Or maybe you can tell how would you like to organize the session in terms of asking questions. Would you like the participants to ask questions on chat and then we can ask the questions later? Or would you like to have this session more interactive so that people can unmute and ask?
So I mean, I won't be looking at the chat. So if you think there is something that it's
Urgent.
asking in the middle, then you can always interrupt me and ask the question. Otherwise, I think maybe at the end, but yeah, feel free to interrupt me as well.
Good.
Yeah. So
that's fine. That's fine. Okay. Yeah, we can start. So thanks, Clem, for accepting our invitation as in the previous year. So it's a pleasure to have you with us for the next time, and we can start. Oh, the next person is joining, so I will just accept.
Great. Okay, so my name is Klem, and I prepared this, I called it Design 101. I wanted to give a talk today about it's like basic steps of a design process. I'll try to do it fast. Obviously, usually design process is something that it's hard to close in 1 hour, but or even less. So I'll try to do it quite fast. And I know that you already started working on your project, so maybe some of the things I'll say at the beginning, it's something that's, you're already a bit further along in your process. But I know that there's also a lot of people seeing these talks afterwards. So I'll do it anyway. Okay. So my background is in design, but for the last few years, I've been working with quantum computing companies and organizations. It started over 4 years ago when I spent a few months at the Center for Quantum Technologies in Singapore, where we worked on an educational game about quantum physics, and this game later became this project, Quantum Flight Trap. You might know it. It's we have a little game there, but it's mostly an interactive visualization and simulation of an optical table. I've led the design and development of Pulsar Studio, also with our Quantum Flight Trap team, which is again a no-code visual interface for Pascal's technology, natural atom quantum computing. I've worked with Xanadu on a project about quantum data. And in the last few months, I've been working with Classic, an Israeli startup where we're building software for quantum computing. Our platform is available online, and I think there is another talk today from someone from Classic. But I won't talk about my works today. I want to talk about the design process. So I divided, obviously the process is usually a bit more complicated, but there's like, I wanted to take certain points from, from the same process that happens when you have a big team, when you have designers on board, and of course, much more time than a very short hackathon. But I wanted to base it on the real actual process that the teams are going through to build products, for example, interactive products. So we'll start with brainstorming. We'll talk about users, the goal, something called user flow, user experience, user interface, user tests. So a lot of users will be very, I would like you to be very focused on your users, and hopefully there'll be some time for questions in the end. Okay, so we'll start with brainstorming, and this is something that I also talked previously. So it'll be a bit of the same thing. So sorry for those who've seen it already. But obviously brainstorming is this very open, very creative process at the beginning of building a project. I think it's very, very important step. So even if you already have an idea, maybe there are certain parts that you can still brainstorm. And it's very creative, very open, but at the same time, it's very important to remember that there are certain rules there, because in the end, you know, the outcome of brainstorming is to have a lot of different ideas and then to choose this one perfect idea, or not perfect, the best idea to work on. So one of these are rules made by or written down by IDEO, which is one of the most famous design agencies in the world. And the first rule is to defer judgment. And I think this is a very important rule. So it's important to try not to say, no, this is a bad idea, that's stupid. And the reason is very simple. Just most of us, for us to be creative, we need to feel that we're not being constantly judged and that we can actually say things that are maybe a bit stupid, a bit wild. So defer judgment. Obviously, encourage wild ideas, build on the ideas of others. This should be a collaboration. So there's, you know, it's not about my idea and just pushing my idea. It's, you know, about taking someone else's idea and building upon this. And this is something that really in the design process, that's super important. And all the good projects, in my opinion, are built in such way. Stay focused on the topic. You still have very limited time, so quantum games only. One conversation at a time, so be respectful, give everyone the time and talk about all the ideas, be visual and go for quantity. And here I'll show the next slide. Usually the brainstorming would be done in front of some whiteboard with maybe a lot of Post-it notes. So there's, you know, a lot of ideas. So you want to not only write them down, but maybe to add some little drawings, something that when you have this huge amount of ideas, it's a bit easier to, for example, group them or to map them, to see what do we have and how do we choose this one idea that we're going to work on. And here I just added a screenshot from Miro, because this is, I assume that most of you are working online. So there are a lot of tools to do the same process online, to have this virtual whiteboard, and Miro is one of the tools. And yeah, so, and also remember just not to, this process obviously can, you know, be endless. So it's important at the beginning to set up some time. I wrote here 3 hours. Obviously, this is up to you, but it shouldn't be too long. And the outcome needs to be that there is one idea that the team agrees on working on. Okay, so the next super important point, maybe the most important point, are the users. And I think this is something that many times it is a bit hard to make the switch, especially if you're a more technical person. But it's really important to remember that you're creating an experience for some other people, right? It's not for yourself, or not only for yourself. It's, you want other people to enjoy it. And so it's really important to understand who are my users. And I think when we're talking about quantum games, I would say that the main question here is, what do they know about quantum, and what level of knowledge is necessary for our game to be an enjoyable experience. So, you know, maybe you're doing this for students, for enthusiasts, people that they do have some knowledge. You don't need to explain the basics, but at the same time, you can also do it, for example, for the most professional people, right? It might be something very niche that only some people know, and that's okay. But you need to know, you need to understand who your users are and to able to describe it. Or maybe it's a general public thing, right? Maybe it's something that is an introduction to quantum things, or it's just about quantum things, but it's done in a way that it's fun for the beginners, but also for people that really know this field really, really well. So I would really like, even if you already started working on your ideas, I think I would really recommend to sit down and write down those like 2-3 sentences about who is our user. And it's usually, if it's like everyone, then usually it might be, it might mean that maybe, we're missing something. Okay, goal, that's a very short one. But if you know what your main idea is, and you know who your user is, then the next step would be to understand and again define what is the ultimate goal. What, like, probably this is somehow related to winning the game, but maybe not. Maybe it's, I don't know, educational, but what's the goal? And I also wrote here about your goal, which is a bit different things, but also remember that you're building a working prototype, so plan your time wisely. Okay, so we have the idea, we have the user defined, we know what is the goal, where the users are supposed to get. And now there is a tool I wanted to show you called user flow, a flow chart that is many times used. I'll show you, a few things. Obviously, there are many different tools that are being used in created experiences, interactive experiences, but I just chose a few that I think can be really useful for you in the process of creating the game. So user flow, it's a diagram where you map a path of the user from the beginning till the end, or maybe some part of the experience, but you're just mapping their path. And we usually, there are a lot of tools to do it. You can easily do it, just, sketch it, draw it on a piece of paper. You really don't need any sophisticated tools. But again, for example, Miro, they have all sorts of templates for this. So for online collaboration, this might be a bit easier. And it usually, you can use, whatever shapes, whatever works for you. But we usually use these building blocks, which would be a start and an end building block. So how the user enters the experience and how do they go out of the experience, which if we're talking about games, it's probably going out would be, for example, losing or winning the game. And then in the middle, you should do a path, that what's happening between those 2 points, right? So we can use those blocks that I call process here. So just the steps that the user is taking, like reading a text or seeing an image. Sometimes we want some input, right? We require the user to give some input, some information. And very important, especially when we're talking about games, the decision block. So it's usually kind of like a yes or no decision, where the path splits into 2 directions or possibly more, but try to do it the way that if you split it into 2, then it's clear, and then you can split it again. And of course, there is a movement between the steps, and it's always one direction. If there's some, there are some loops, then you need to also use the arrow to go back. And I found this flow chart, this user flow diagram somewhere on the internet. Very, very simple, but it's the game starts, right? Then there's a process, the ball drops, then there's decision, the user decision. So player puts a board under the ball. If yes, the points increase. If no, there is game over and the game ends. And I think it's a Pong. It's probably a single player Pong and not this more advanced version I'm showing here. But I thought it's a nice example because it's, this is obviously super, super simple, super, it probably for most of the, projects, it's a bit more complex. But I think it's very, very important to map it, to understand what is happening with the user on each step. And it's also a way where we can spot some problems. For example, there's some area we haven't actually thought about, we haven't mapped, we didn't think about, okay, what if they decide otherwise? So I really think this is a great thing to use. And again, you can easily do it with just a piece of paper and a pen. Okay, so next next step in the process. We're getting to the famous UX UI. And here, obviously, there are many different steps, many different tools we're using, but I will only show you one, which are wireframes. And this is, we have the idea right now. We have defined the user. We know what's the goal of the game, and we have this very basic user flow. So now we want to get to building this kind of a blueprint, right? It's like the architecture of your experience. And I'm showing this picture on the purpose because, again, like here, I really think that it's something that you can just draw by hand. Maybe there's one person in the team responsible for that. Of course, you can also do it with online tools, but there are also a lot of very professional tools for this. So definitely you don't need to get there. It'll probably take you more time to understand the tools. And it's something that and also professionals use the handwritten one. So it's, this is writing it down with your hand or drawing it down with your hand is actually a very, very good idea. And what do we do here? So this is it's like, if you think about the building, this is the construction. We want to know, so for example, we have this view here, right? And there are some buttons, cards, some elements here. And I know that when I press this small element, it gets me to this view. And in this view, I know I need to have some graph, some illustration, a photo or something like this. I know I have all these buttons, and I know that if I click this button, it gets me to this view. And then it's important here to describe all of these elements, right? That we have buttons, that we need a photo here, that we have a text block here, maybe some switch, some checkbox. So this is a place where you describe the element, the type of element, and their placement. And it's important to map all of these views in your game. And here again, going back to Pong, I found this very simple wireframe of the Pong game. So you can see it's like, if you think about, it's like the layer before the graphic design is added, right? So there are like the font you use should be just the plain, the most default font. You don't add any colors. It should be very, it's only an information about the type of element, the interaction, right? For example, we see that this is a paddle and it moves up and down. And that's it, right? Don't add any graphic design. Just describe the types of elements. And again, I really think this is this is a very, very important step, because this is another step where you can see that if the experience you're building, the interaction you're building, if it's correct, right? If we're using the correct types of element, if this should be a button or maybe a different type of element. If we mapped all of the views, what happens if I click here, if I move here, interact some other way here? I guess, the basic views I can think of for your games would be probably, some beginning, maybe somewhere where you explain the rules, maybe some level map if you have different levels. And then, of course, the levels themselves, then maybe some winning view, some losing view. So you need to, again, it's like another layer of mapping the whole experience. And yeah, okay, so this is wireframe. And again, you can use Miro. I'm showing Miro only because it's, it's for free and it's a grateful collaboration, but I have, it can literally be, any other tool. There are many different things. But again, you could also, this is something that can be done really great by just hand drawing things. Okay, so now we get to UI, the user interface. So this is if we go back to this, thinking about we're building a building, this would be a bit like the interior design. right? So like all the, I don't know, like how do we paint the walls, and what furniture do we choose? And this is exactly, again, coming back to Pong, right? This is the moment when you can have from the same wireframe and the same user flow, you can get, for example, to this very simple old school Pong game view, or this hipster, I don't know, like colorful, more modern kind of view. I actually really like the simple old one. But this is exactly the step. This is where you add this layer of this graphic design. If you have some illustrators on board, this is of course also a time where I guess probably most of you don't, but this is the step, right? But before you add this, you should know this architecture, this blueprint of your experience. You should only start designing the way it looks the moment you really know what type of elements you have and how do they work. And well, this graphical part is probably in some way the hardest to design without designer on board. But if you don't have any designers with you, then I really think it's good to make it simple. That would be my recommendation. And I was trying to think about, like, what could be the things you should concentrate on to be able to get to something that's, that feels nice, looks nice. It's not, not only working smoothly, but it just, when people look at it, it feels correct or surprising, or, like anything between correct to a wow effect. And for all sorts of typical elements, like, if you have some buttons or drop downs, other things like that, there's a lot of libraries with that you can use. There's a lot of companies that they publish their design systems, so others can use them. All the big companies like Google, Microsoft, IBM, they have, and many others, they publish their design systems, and then there's a lot of libraries you can use that are using those design systems. There are, of course, some other design systems as well. So it's probably, not the best idea to waste your time thinking about how the buttons should look like. You can just use some ready-made libraries. And the same with graphic elements, icons, photographs, illustrations. There's a lot of online stocks, libraries where you can find these things. And I thought that two things you can concentrate on. It's choosing the right colors and fonts for your design. And there are a lot of great tools for this. I'll show you two. And one is something by Adobe. Adobe is a company that is doing, they have a monopoly over the design software for many years. All kinds of design. They also last year, they bought Figma, which is the main program used for UX or UI design. So it's even, this is also like they're the main company behind this now. And they have this tool called Adobe Color. And for example, you can look for color themes here. You can, they have all sorts of suggestions, but you can also, they have all sorts of tools here. You can also somewhere here, you can upload your design, and then you can choose it in the different color schemes. So I think this is one tool that can be, you can also, of course, analyze. They have contrast checker and a tool to check if your experience is colorblind safe. So I think this is very useful, and it's basically, it's also like what we always do in design. Like if you think about any kind of platform, website, Also offline stuff, it's usually we choose a set of basic colors. So this main color theme, and this is something that then, of course, it doesn't mean that you don't need to use, you can't use anything else, but it's something that it's like those, it sets you some basis to build upon. So this is about colors, and the same with fonts. And here I'll show you another tool. It's called realtimecolors.com. Again, there are a lot of things like this. I'm just, but this is something that I think works quite nicely. So it's they have just, you know, this some kind of website here, and they have a few other ones here, and you can see how your, for example, the colors you chose, how do they work, how they look together, right? So is it a good idea to do it like this? And you can change the colors, and this gives you a bit of, you know, before, I think it's like this minimum, the most minimal thing you can do design wise, and that it's, you know, that your project feels a bit more professional. And what is nice here is also they have this font part, and you can see there's the heading font and the body font. And I think this is actually important. This is something that in general, I don't know these fonts. Okay, that's probably a very ugly font, but you can check different fonts and see how it works. I would say either go for one font for everything, or have this a bit more interesting or a weird font for headings, but then definitely try to go for something very simple and elegant for the body. This is the body font. This is an information that needs to be very easy to read for the users. So maximum 2 fonts, but you can also stay with one. So coming back to to my presentation. So I really think this is, it's, you know, maybe it sounds obvious, but I think you can build very beautiful experiences concentrating your design choices on the correct font and the correct colors. And I'll show you one example, which isn't a game example, but it's something I really like. And I think the same rule applies to interactive things, to games as well. And so this is discrete Fourier transform equation, and there's an explanation below to find the energy at a particular frequency, linear signal, so on. It's an explanation. For me, it still tells me absolutely nothing, and probably for a lot of people it's not something that really let me understand this equation. But this project, it's something that actually was made in such way. It's a project by Stuart Riffle, and what he did, he just simply color-coded the equation, right? He did very, very simple thing. And then suddenly when I read it, right, so I have to find the energy, and I know, okay, so X is the energy, and then K is this frequency, right? And this is the signal. So this is such a small, minimal move, right? Just adding a bit of color, and suddenly it transforms this from something that is very hard to understand to something that you know, suddenly anyone can read and maybe not fully understand this equation, but at least to have some kind of understanding. So I really would like for you to think in such way about design, that there are certain very minimal moves that can be very, very powerful. And another example I wanted to show is this game. You probably know, it's obviously not a quantum game, but it was very popular some years ago. And I really like it, the design, because it's so simple, right? Like there's, you know, just simple font, some button, and this super simple board. It's only squares with numbers. And what they did, they just chose very nice color theme, right? If you go back to those tools like the Adobe tool I showed you, this would be probably called something like an autumn color palette or something like this. And it became a very elegant design. And I think this kind of design is something you really can easily get with even without having this, you know, an extra design person on your team. Yeah, so this I would aim for this. This is a really, really great example. Okay, so the last point now. And the last point is user tests. And of course, I know that you have very limited time during the hackathon, but I think it's very important that you'll try to squeeze somewhere in the end, or not even in the end, whenever you have something working, a bit of time for testing your project. And you want to test, well, first of all, you want to spot any bugs you have, but also something I called UX bugs. So things that are maybe not necessarily a typical bug, but things like, I don't know, there is some important button to press, but it's not visible to, or not enough visible. People are like missing it, right? Or things that people just have no idea what to do at certain point. So all sorts of things that you'll be able to still, if you think it's important, because obviously you get certain feedback from the test and you don't need to use it, but it's a knowledge you get that you can make the experience you're building better. And some rules, again, this is, you know, a huge area. There are professionals doing this, but I was trying to, you know, think about a few points that could be helpful for this kind of hackathon experience. So, you know, like obviously specify a goal. And I think here the goal would be to learn if the users understand your game, if they're able by themselves to go from the beginning till the end. But maybe you also want to test some, you know, smaller chunks, something specific. Something that is super important is that don't explain the experience, because the idea is that you're supposed to see how people interact with your project in a way that your users will. So don't try to explain it. If people don't understand how to start, what to do, this is extremely important information for you, because this lets you maybe add some explanation, do something, you know, highlight something, do something more visible. So don't try to explain it. And even maybe more important, don't persuade anyone. You'll probably, you know, your user tests, the people you're going to user test on are probably going to be like your friends or family or someone you have, someone near you. So obviously they anyhow want to tell you good things. So if they give you some feedback, don't tell them, oh no, it's actually not like this. It's actually, you know, if you try to persuade them that this is a great project, they'll just nod and tell you that it is. And this is, again, not the aim. You want to learn what they actually don't like, because then you can do something about it. And you can, you know, you can just observe how they interact. You could just give them this thing on the computer and stand with, I don't know, with a notebook somewhere next to them and see and just note to yourself all the things. You can ask them to, for example, to explain the interface to you, to explain what they see on the screen. And this is actually really, really nice, because then you can see what's the first thing they notice, if they misinterpret something, if they missed something, if they understood the general idea. So this is something I personally really like to do during user tests. You can give them some specific tasks if you want to test some maybe part of your idea. And then also at the end, you can ask them more open questions, like, you know, what they like most, what was surprising, what they didn't like, what was confusing, if something was too easy, too hard. Maybe they have some good ideas, something to change, to add. And again, remember that, this is only a knowledge you're trying to gather. You don't need to use any of their feedback, right? You can disregard the whole thing. But here, it's not about persuading them, and it's okay if the ideas they give you, it's not, you don't need to do anything with it, but you want to gather this feedback. And that's it. And so these are the main steps I thought are from the design process that I thought are relevant in the hackathon experience. So from brainstorming, defining the user, defining the goal, to more design specific steps like building a user flow, building the wireframes, and then adding this UI graphic layer to it, and of course user testing, and then going back. Yeah, and that's it.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Klem. Thanks for this interesting presentation. I can see that we have some comments and maybe also questions on the chat, so let me just read it. Yeah, so this comment from Ivan: I use Xodo since the added pages go to PDF, but Miro is great for math. There was a question if it's open source, and Ivan said that it has free version with the adding page to PDF function, which is useful for making matrices. And Abdullah asked, there is CorelDRAW to
Sorry,
write.
Just maybe if we go to the first question, I didn't understand what was which.
Yeah, so it was rather just the comment from Ivan that he uses Xodo since the added pages go to PDF, but Miro is great for math. So that was the comment.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there are a lot of tools. This was just something.
Yes, yeah. But there's actual question from Abdullah. This is question to you, Klem. My question is: I'm an experimentalist and theorist as well, as well as a self-taught programmer and a strong advocate for physics outreach. But this part is where I'm not good at designing the gameplay from a beginner perspective, and whether if the game can be interactive. Any suggestions for people like me? Quantum games seems like a fun way I can represent my knowledge.
Yeah, so I think if you think about beginners, so this user steps, defining your user, right? So it sounds like you want to do something for, which actually you can do this before brainstorming, right? So you can start with this, okay, we're brainstorming for an idea for someone that is a beginner. I think if you're doing this for beginners and you're someone that is definitely not a beginner and you don't have beginners in your teams, or you're doing it by yourself, then I would say, try this try to user test as soon as possible. So maybe already when you have the idea, just, find someone that you think, it's quite easy to find people that are beginners in quantum physics or quantum computing. So for sure, you have them somewhere around. And just, tell them about the idea, and then see even like, what do you need to explain to them for them to understand it? And maybe this is some beginning for you for the gameplay. So yeah, I definitely think then you should start with talk with your users from the beginning.
Great, fantastic. Thank you, Klem. All right, do we have more questions to Klem? Another comment from Abdullah: we are aiming for audience who don't have prior quantum knowledge. In that case, we are hoping not to complicate the idea. Seems reasonable. And comment from Sumit: thanks for the session, for that discrete Fourier transform equation, adding colors to it. Is there any tool? And can you share the links which you shared?
Yeah, maybe I'll share the links, even the I don't know.
Can you share the slides? So there will be the links on the slides, I believe. Okay, yeah, that would be great. So there's a question if you will be the judges, one of the judges for the classic category, but we don't have classic category. So classic did not propose a specific special category. So there's no classic category. So this year, Klem is not in the jury, but she's a mentor, so she can give you some hints if you want. So I think we tentatively agreed that Klem will be available in about 3 hours during this hackathon. So you can try to reach her out directly if you want. But please take this opportunity to ask your questions now as well, if there are any. So if you still have time, Clem, I don't know, maybe some teams would like to maybe consult something from their interfaces now.
Yeah,
It's
of course,
quite,
we already
yeah.
have something, but I think really the this Fourier transfer example, like what is really great there, that it's such a minimal move, right? They only color coded it. So I really think that when you're talking about beginners, then try to think about it in like, what's the smart, super simple way we can do to explain something, to tell them something they didn't know. Yeah. So it's hard. It's very hard, right? It's but I think it's something you can do during a hackathon.
Indeed. Okay, so Abdullah asked if they can reach you out for any suggestions. So I believe that the short answer is yes. But of course, Clem's time is limited as well. So like, please take yeah, take this seriously and just be prepared also when you ask questions. Be specific and be prepared to just get as much as you can from her mentorship.
Try to help as much as I can.
Good. All right, I don't see more questions now. It was very nice talk, so thank you for that. And I will now stop recording.
Great.